Josh Dewitt with Brookstone Kennels. Today I want to talk about one of the funnest hunts that I've been on, and I've been waterfowl hunting a long time, but one of the funnest hunts that we did last year. And I got a call out of the blue from Blake at Fouled Reality last summer, and the call went something like this: hey, we've been invited to go to Texas, and have your dogs ever picked Sandhill Cranes? And of course, being from Southeast Missouri, my answer was no. I've read about them and I've seen some stuff in magazines and a little bit on TV, and I said it looks fantastic, but no, we've never picked a Sandhill Crane. And his next question was, do you think your dogs will do it? And not being one to back off from a challenge too easily, I said, you know what, let's go give it a try. That kind of set the stage for this, and I had, several months there to get ready for this, but I had no clue how to prepare my dogs to go pick Sandhill Cranes. So I did a lot of research, got online, looked as much as I could, what videos I could find I could, and what I learned were these are tall, long birds. They got somewhat of a body, a lot of wings, and a lot of legs. So to get the dogs ready to pick something like that, I had to get a little bit creative and figure out something that we could use in training to just get them ready for that. So what I came up with, what I learned was a Sandhill Crane's roughly the same weight as a Canada Goose, but obviously with a lot longer wingspan. So what I came up with, I just took an old pair of jeans and cut the legs off of them and tied it to my dummy here. So now I've got something that's going to replicate these wings. And what's important with that is the dogs have got to learn how to pick this up, and they're going to end up stepping on this just like they would in the real deal, and just get them prepared to negotiate these wings dragging on the ground and still carry this weight. And this is what we worked on for several months. The training, basically, I knew we were going to be in fields, somewhat in the wide open, so I tried to pick areas where we were out in the open. There was nothing too complicated other than just sending the dogs and getting them used to picking this weight and dealing with this dragging on the ground. As it turned out, that paid off for us. The dogs were able to pick those birds fairly easily, but sure enough, this was an issue for them, tripping over the wings and those kinds of things. But the great news is they didn't give up on it. So what we're going to do today is just show you a couple of these retrieves. This is something you can easily do at home if you're going to go on this kind of a hunt, and this is what I recommend that you work on with your dogs. So we'll set up a couple of retrieves and just show you how the dogs can do. Now, to get the dogs ready for going and retrieving these Sandhill Cranes, I varied the distance. So I started short, 15, 20 yards, just to get them and be able to be in close proximity to them, just to get them to pick that weight and all this long stuff on that dummy. Once I got that figured out with the dogs and they were able to pick it reliably, bring it back, and hold it reliably, then I stretched out the distance. What we're going to show you now is just about a 50 to 60 yard retrieve on that dummy. And just see how Diesel will run him first, just picks this up and deals with the weight and all those long wings dragging on the ground. So here we go. We'll give you a shot with Diesel. Stay. Hold back. So you can see first he's got to figure out how to get his mouth around that. You can see this is exactly what happened on that hunt. They would step on those wings and it would want to pull their head down. The thing here is he stayed with it, picked it up, got a good hold on it, and delivered. Dead. Good lad. Sit down. We'll set up the same retrieve, maybe a little bit different distance with Drew. She's a much smaller dog, and you can see how she negotiates it. We'll show you that next. So we're going to run Drew on the same retrieve that we gave Diesel. She's a much smaller dog compared to what Diesel is. He's fairly tall and fairly long, so it's a little bit easier for him to deal with these big birds. Not so much for a little dog, but my recommendation is don't let that stop you. Little dogs have just as much drive and just as much courage to go pick this up as the big ones, provided they're prepared for it. So you'll see she may struggle a little bit more to bring this back than what Diesel did, but she'll get the job done. So let's have a look at this. Drew. Hold back. So you can see with her, the wings are going to be much more of a problem, but she's sticking with it. She's going to figure this out and bring this bird back to me. Good girl. Lots of encouragement here. Good girl. Good girl. Good Drew. Good Drew. And this is exactly what happened out in the field. This exact thing that you're seeing. Good girl, good. Very good, very good. Dead. Very nice, very nice. So you can see that was a little bit more difficult for her, but what I want to tell you is the best retrieve that we had on that entire hunt was this little dog right here, who went and picked a crane that had sailed and died about 375 yards away. It was her turn to pick. We sent her, she went and got that bird and brought it all the way back. It was picture perfect. So even the little dogs can do this. It was a lot of fun. I hope we get to do it again someday. And this is just a good way to get your dogs prepared for that. Find something like this, put it together yourself, and it'll pay dividends when you hit that Sandhill crane field. So for as much fun as that Sandhill crane hunt was, there were some very important lessons that we learned, both me and the dogs, on that hunt. And if you're gonna go do that type of hunting, there's a couple things that you'll wanna go work on with your dog before you go, or at least for the setups that we had with Brent at Premier Sandhills. His setup was a lot of open fields. We were in cut wheat, we were in milo, and we were in peanut fields. And the way he liked to set it up with the dogs is the dogs were remote and he wanted them in dog hides completely concealed up. And that is not something that I worked on extensively in the off season last year leading up to that. And we had some issues, I'll be honest with you. And the biggest issue I had, and it was with one dog in particular, and he's a very nice finished dog, Diesel, was breaking. And even though I had him in this and I had him remote and this was all zipped up, when those birds were coming in and there were 9 shooters with 27 rounds going off, it was a lot of pressure on him and he ended up breaking. And obviously, I've said it before, breaking is a big issue with me. I do not like it. It's bad form with the dog, bad form with the trainer, and it's a huge safety issue, not only for the dog, but for the shooters as well. So it's something that you want to work on. We'll definitely be working. We're going to invest a lot of time this off season getting the dogs prepared for this. And what we'll do is we'll put them in the dog hides and we'll seal them up just like we're going to be on a crane hunt. And it will be a lot of denials with a lot of gunfire. And what do I mean by denials? For those of you guys that don't know what that means, is a denial is the dog does not get a retrieve. You go out and pick it up yourself or you dry fire, but there's nothing there to reward the dog for breaking. The reason you want to work on that in your training is that's the time to fix it. I always try to fix issues out on a hunt if I can, but it's not always the most convenient, especially if you've got 8 other shooters that are wanting to enjoy their hunt. There's not a lot of opportunity to take 15, 20 minutes and go work on an issue with your dog. So work on this in the off season. Again, and I'm going to show you this, it'll be a lot of the dog in the hide, completely closed up. He can't see anything, but he's going to hear a lot of gunfire, but there's nothing out there for him to retrieve. So we'll just show you that next, and that'll give you an idea of what you can go work on this off season. So what we'll do this off season, again, I've got Diesel in the dog hide. It's all zipped up just like it was on our hunt. And you can just dry fire a lot, whether it be a popper loads out of your shotgun, starter pistol. In my case, I'm just going to use my remote launcher, no dummies on it, just dry fire it. And we will work this into our training regimen where we just do a lot of gunfire with him in here to just teach him to be patient, that there's nothing out there to retrieve. And this will be the best cure for our breaking problem that we had last year. And we'll see this pay off when we go on our next crane hunt. So here we go. He's in here, all closed up. Gonna dry fire here. No movement in here, which is good. That's what I'm looking for. Now what I'm going to do is just open this up and reward my dog for being patient and calm and quiet. Good boy, good lad. And as you can see, he's just laying in there chilled out, which is actually really good. That's what I want. He's calm, he's relaxed, he's not wanting to bust out of there and go pick something up. So we'll work a lot of this in, like I said, off the off season, just to have him prepared so when we go on that next crane hunt, we won't have that breaking problem again. So a couple other lessons learned from our crane hunt last year, and this ties in with the breaking problem we had, was just overall steadiness. And I want to talk about the pressure that was applied to the dogs. We've already talked about how big these Sandhill cranes are, and what we learned is you can see these things coming from a mile away, and if we can see them, the dogs can certainly see them. And what we learned is these birds work in slow. And even when they're on top of your spread, they'll be low and they will work that decoy spread quite a few times, and that big of a bird right above you, that's a lot of pressure, especially if your dog can see it. So you've got to make absolutely sure your dog is steady. How do you train for that? There's no way to train for a flock of Sandhill Cranes coming in and working your spread as slow as they do. So I would go back to lots and lots of denials, a lot of dummies, things out on the ground with gunfire that your dogs do not go pick. That's the best way to steady them up. So that's one thing we learned, was the dogs can just see these birds coming from forever. That puts a lot of pressure on them. Secondly was just the amount of guns that we had. There were 9 shooters in our group the 3 days that we were there. That's a lot of gunfire going off at one time, which also puts a tremendous amount of pressure on your dog. Couple ways that you can go and work with your dog to get them used to that kind of gunfire, especially if you're like me and you do a lot of the work by yourself, is go to your local trap range or skeet range, get permission, take your dog there and just stand with them, sit with them while these guys are shooting. That puts a lot of gunfire around them, and you can be right there with them to work on their steadiness, have them sit, have them stay, have them relax with all that gunfire going on. That's a really good way to get your dog used to a lot of gunfire. From there, that's going to get you in a better position to go when you've got a lot of shooters in the pit, in the layout blinds, whatever it is that you're hunting in, with a lot of gunfire to help your dog stay a little bit steady. And the last lesson I want to share with you guys on our Sandhill crane hunt, our guide Brent wanted those birds picked as fast as possible, and the reason for that was he said that the working birds, if they see one laying on the ground, that will spook them out of there. So once the shooting was done and we had birds down, the guide wanted them picked up as quickly as possible before that next group of birds worked in. This also will unsteady a dog if you're not very careful. So just imagine all that shooting, it's down, the guide says get them picked up, you hurry over to your dog, get them out of the blind, and right away you're sending them to pick. That will unsteady your dog very, very quickly, and it's going to lead up to breaking. So we will also work on that on the off season. And what I'll do is I'll do a lot of denial work like I've talked about, and then every so often I'm going to just practice quickly going, getting the dog out of the dog hide and sending them to pick as fast as I can, just so I can get them used to that but still remain steady. So that's one thing that we'll be working on the off season, along with the other issues that we saw. And hopefully we'll see the benefit this coming fall when we go back to shoot some more cranes. Hey, so a couple things that we've learned. This is our first ever Sandhill crane hunt. It's the first time that any Brookstone dog has seen. A couple things we've learned already. One, you're going to want to have an experienced dog if you're going to go out and try this. I've picked that up already. And a couple reasons why. If you send a dog out and one of these are crippled, these birds are very large and they get aggressive if they're crippled. We've seen it. Diesel went out and picked one up this morning, and as he brought it back, this bird came around, and this beak it was using to defend itself, and it's also got some very sharp claws on this. So you're going to want a very experienced dog if you're going to go out and give this a try, is what we've learned this morning. So the other thing that we've learned is it's taking the dogs a little bit of time to figure out how to pick these up, and what we found is if they can get it right here at the top of the breast, he's able to pick this up and bring it back. But as you can see, this is a large bird. So make sure your dog has got some experience if you're going to go out and try this, and make sure you've got good control on them.